Hey, we're live. How's it going, everybody? It is a fantastic Saturday afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon now, 12:01. So we're hanging out, ready to do the live chat. I'm going to be answering your questions for the next 45 minutes, an hour, whatever comes out. So feel free to leave the questions down in the chat below, and I will get to them. If you can put like question at the beginning or something of that nature, so I know that it's a question, that helps me out, because a lot of times I'm trying to read through them and catch up and I don't always pop out, is that a question or not? So that would be great. Yeah, so leave your questions down below and we'll hop into them. Hey, Michael, hi. Good to have you here. We're going to have some fun today. Let me start with an early question that just came out. And hey, you okay? You're fine. Ooh, happiness. Thank you. My wife loves me. She brought me lasagna and it is hot. So I'm going to set that aside for right now, because it's lunchtime here. And oops. Oh, well. Let's see. Matt, Samuel, how's it going? If you guys have questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat and I'll get to them. See if you can mark them as questions so that I can pick them out, and that'll make it a little easier. Question that was asked earlier is, what is your all-time favorite tool? And I'm not quite sure why, but I get this question a lot. And I think it's because, as a hand tool woodworker, you tend to have more tools because you have a dozen hand planes as opposed to having a planer. So I don't know if that generates more of the question, but usually my favorite tool of the all time is the tool that is in my hand at any given time. I like to find a tool that I like to find the enjoyment with whatever tool I'm using, even if it's a plain simple tool like a 1/2-inch chisel. This is an enjoyable tool for me, and I love working with it. But I think the chisel is my favorite tool because it's the most versatile. It's the one that you can do most anything else with. Cool wise, my Bearcat dovetail saw is just, man, I love this thing. The knotty burly wood is just, yeah, this thing is so much fun. Every chance I get to use it, I love doing that. But then of course there is the Stanley 55. And man, you can't go wrong. This is just a severely cool tool. And yeah, I could keep going on list with like the compass plane. There's a lot of cool tools out there, but I think whatever tool is in my hand at the time, that's the one I want to enjoy. That's the one I like. So asking that's kind of a hard question for me. Let's continue on. Hey man, got any tips for angled dovetails? Angled dovetails. Like as in you're rather than having them at 90 degrees, you're going to then splay it out to like an octagon or pentagonal box. Honestly, with hand tools, any angle is an angle. I mean, even 90 degrees is an angle. And Shannon Rogers, who actually, yeah, he's here right now. He's well known for saying, any angle is an angle, even 90 degrees. So if you take that out of the equation and think about it that way, everything kind of becomes simple, especially with a hand tool. If you're trying to figure out how to cut an angle, on a weird angle, well, then turn the board so it's vertical, and then it's no longer a weird angle to you. And with hand tools, any angle is the same as any other angle. So it's just thinking about it from that point of view. So anytime you're kind of splaying out a dovetail at an odd angle, you're still going off the same distance from one side to the other, in the inside and the outside. So you can still use the same practices and the same tools. It's just a matter of the way you're thinking about it. And I think that's one of the things that scares off a lot of people, is when you get those what are conventionally weird things. They're not that weird when you get into hand tools. So I probably didn't answer your question there. I probably should do a video on that sometime. It might make a really good topic. So we will try that. Let me pop out this chat, make it a little bit easier to see. Yeah, if any of you haven't noticed, if you see the 3 buttons up in the top right corner where you can pop out chat, that makes it so that's the only thing open in the window. It's kind of nice when you're not looking at the video. But if you're looking at the video, then it doesn't help you. Let me go back up to where I was at. So, hey, Shannon, how's it going? I am having fun here today. And also, if you aren't watching this live, if this is something that you're watching in the past, then I do have down in the comments, I am putting all of these questions with a timestamp. So you can read through the questions, and if there's one you really want to see, you can jump straight to that in the session. So if you're watching it in the past, definitely avail yourself of that. So every now and then I just take a second and copy those over so I have them. Have you ever tried using traditional wooden bench planes? Yes, I have several of them actually. If you ever watch my video, I have a whole pile of them up on the top. Most of those are molding planes, but I do have, you know, the coffin smoother, the jack, the 4-plane, and the jointing plane. Mental breakdown. And I do enjoy them. I find them to be a lot of fun. However, for video's sake, I find most people don't, at least in America, most people don't want to use them. They want to use the metal planes because they're a little bit more common. They're a little bit simpler to understand. And so for most videos, I try and use those because they're easier to relate in videos. But there are things that are very fun with it. When I have a piece of work that I really want to slow down and enjoy the smoothing process, there is really nothing better feeling than pulling out a nice coffin smoother that's set up well. Just the wood on wood feeling is fantastic, and really it's a pleasure. So yes, I do enjoy using them. I just don't use them as much because they're not quite as common, at least in the United States. From what I understand, in Europe they're far more common, but I haven't been to Europe, so might have to someday. Why? Oof, I have a question. Why you an awesome guy, my brother? Thanks, TJ. Nice question. Larry Moore asks, would you recommend an electric planer, I'm guessing over a hand plane, for average woodworker doing basic projects? That really depends. They each have their pros and cons. I mean, I do have an electric plane. That is my one caveat to all hand tools, is I have a 7-inch wide, massive, beastly power planer. And the reason for that is that there are a lot of times where you have to do a lot of milling. And like right now, I'm looking at almost 300 board feet of hickory that I need to plane down. And doing that all by hand might take me a week or more. Now, I would find that to be very enjoyable. I would find that to actually be a lot of fun. But for producing videos and things like that, and the time-wise, it's just easier to get out the power planer and run it down. Would I recommend that to someone getting started? It depends on what you want to learn. If you're wanting to learn hand tools and you're wanting to become better at it, there's absolutely nothing better than doing it over and over and over again. Well, at least while you're learning about it. Anything with hand tools, you're not going to be able to just sit down and do it right. The only way to learn is to actually jump in and do it. And the more you can do it, the more you can learn about your little ticks and the way you hold things and the way you work with them. And so learning about it is fantastic. If learning isn't your goal and your goal is completing the project, then a thickness planer really is a fantastic tool. It allows you to get through that boring process of getting everything down to thickness very quickly, very easily. And yeah, it's very, very good. So I guess it just depends on what you want to do. What is your goal? Yeah, I don't have any problem with power tools, and they are a lot of fun. What do you find more fun? I guess that's the best question. Have you ever done a double sunrise dovetail? No, I have not. This is a question from Thomas Russell, and there a whole bunch of those, specialty dovetails and cool things. I just have never gotten into. The showy, flashy joints. Someday I would like to get into them. I just haven't found a particular use or a particular I want to do it. But who knows? Maybe I will. They would make some very good videos. I don't see a whole lot of general use for them other than on that showpiece, which I guess my last dresser kind of was because I had all the tails showing on the front. And I might have done something fun like that. But yeah, I'll probably do it sometime in the future. Between that and like the wolf's tooth, the dovetail inside of a dovetail, those are a lot of fun, and that'd be a good learning experience. So maybe I'll do them soon. Looking at buying my first router plane. Suggestions, open or closed? I've used both, and I really don't have any problem with them. I think I prefer closed when you're learning because you have more surface area to reference off of. Open gives you a little more visibility, but I've never found the closed one to be that detrimental to its work. So generally, I prefer it to be a closed so that you have the sole all the way around the front. But everyone's gonna have a personal opinion on that. That's my personal opinion. As to the first one to get, this is one time where I think that getting an antique one may not be the best way, because by the time you get an antique, you get it honed up and cleaned up, you're gonna be spending $60 for a cheap one, up to $100 for a good one, and they're harder to find. And for a few dollars more, you can go buy a new one from Veritas, and they're good planes. They are top-notch things. I think if it was for a first one, I'd probably go get one from Veritas as opposed to Nicholson or one of the others. There are a bunch of other ones out there, and I really have never come across one that I don't like. It's really not that hard to make one as well. So I have several videos on making one out of a scrap piece of wood and an old chisel, or you can go the Paul Sellers route and make the poor man's router. Works great. I actually used one of those for quite a while. So a bunch of options there. I don't know if I have any particular recommendations because I don't know you personally and what you prefer. But dive in, see what you like. Let me add that to the list before I forget. 0, nope, 1, 0. Okay. I noticed you used some gyokucho saws in the hammer video. I don't know what you're saying there. Oh, okay. No, the saws that I have are from a company called Suzanne. They're a cheaper brand. They're kind of focused on Amazon sales, but for the price, they're fantastic, and I've really been enjoying them. I'm not trying to become Eastern or Western. I'm trying to slowly work them into my working habit, because there are times when using a Japanese saw is very beneficial. Not having the back on there allows for some of the joinery cuts to be really kind of much simpler. But there are things about them that I just do not like, and there are times when you couldn't pay me enough to use one. Am I becoming a convert? No. Sorry, lemongrass picker. Maybe someday in the future I will, make the dive and do like an entire shop focused on, Japanese woodworking. And I think that would be kind of a fun experiment to learn the entirety of the form, rather than using an occasional Japanese tool on a Western bench and system. They're very different ways of mindsets and different mechanical functions, the way your body works to push or pull. So yeah, I'll be playing with them more. Yeah, I'll send you my, actually, yes, you did get my check in the mail today. This is from Shannon over at the Renaissance Woodworker. My check for the being a part of your group. What is the apprentice? There we are. Yeah. No, I'm actually, for all of you who know, I am in the apprentice program with Shannon Rogers, and if you have the money, it is definitely worth it. A crazy amount of information that what he has over there is phenomenal, and really, really good system. So thank you, Shannon, for that. You really have a seriously solid school there, and that is very cool. Been a huge help to me. Yeah, I just finished the lathe video, and that just came out a little bit ago, so that's a lot of fun. How's the shop reno coming? The shop is basically done. I'm kind of waiting on building the last few tool holders until after the Christmas season, because I just have a whole bunch of things going on, especially with the putting out a video every day this month. My time is kind of booked, so that will be coming along. But most everything else is done. I think the other big tool I need to get that scroll saw up and working, which I want to play with that. Question from CT Hobbies: what hardwood would be good for outdoor projects such as benches, etc.? Love your channel, by the way. I personally love white oak, and white oak is very rot resistant and a great exterior wood. Matt Cremona actually did a video. Well, it was about a year ago. He built his outdoor table, and that was all out of white oak. I think a lot of times with the wood, it depends more on how are you going to be finishing it and what is your plan for maintenance, because all woods will eventually rot and all woods will eventually need to be replaced or refinished. But white oak is actually a really good one for that. And I think if I had to build any exterior furniture, that would be my first choice. I've also done a good bit with cedar. Though it's a softwood, it is a very, especially with hand tools, it's a nice wood. I like that. Hope that answers your question. What are all the numbers on the wall behind you? Oh yeah, all these. They're my some of my running bibs. I like the races that I really enjoy or want to remember. I hang up a bib up here. So like this one was my first ultra marathon. Let's see. No, excuse me. This one was my first ultra marathon up here. This was the most recent marathon I did, and there's a bunch of others in there. So yeah, there's my running numbers. Preparing for my own live. Oh yeah. Shannon's going to be live here in about an hour working on his perch stool, which if you haven't seen that, it's really cool. That one's on my list, and I was wanting to do something similar to that, but I don't know if I can fit it into the schedule right now. But yeah, he's building a beautifully carved seat perch stool, and so he's going to be putting in these stretchers here soon. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. It might have actually, no, I'm going to be out of town, but I'll have to catch it post. But yeah, definitely go check out Shannon's video. He'll be live on that. And Shannon does these live videos where he does it in real time, actually working and answering questions, and they're really cool to hang out on and get in. So definitely go check out that. Yeah, if any of you have questions, let me know, but mark them with questions so that I'm not having to read through them as well, not having to pick them out. Mike has a question. What would be a good choice of wood for an exterior bench? Well, I think I just answered that with your exterior woods. Yeah, white oak, cedar. If you want to get into it, ipe is a great exterior wood that's often for like boat decking. Very expensive though. I actually just worked with a piece of ipe in the lathe that I used in the wedge to hold the puppet in place. And it is a very, very dense wood, very difficult to work with, but a fantastic finish on it. I really, really enjoyed that. But I think my choice would be white oak. Surprise. I'm having trouble squaring cuts and planing material flat. Any good tips? Squaring cuts, there's a whole bunch of body mechanics that can go into with cutting square and plumb down a board. And that's kind of something you have to learn over time. And unless I could, be there seeing how your arm is moving, you want your hand, arm, and elbow all to be in line with the saw so that your movement is nice and straight, rather than having your elbow cocked out to the side makes it you're running your saw kittywampus. There's a lot of other things from your stance and things like that that will cause problems with having a saw go off stray. But one of the things I want to stress is that there really isn't a how out of square just depends on how in tune your measuring device is. And if you start getting into this from a metalworking and machining standpoint, out of square can be, hundreds of a thousand. And I think a lot of people really get bent out of shape of having something perfect off the saw. And, eventually, occasionally that will happen. The better you get at it, the more time you put into it, you will get better and better at having a really nice square plumb cut. But that's not going to happen the first time, and don't expect it to happen the first time. And oh well, that's why they make shooting boards. So I like to tell people, if you're having problems getting a really nice, clean, square plumb cut, then build yourself a shooting board, and all of your cuts then can be cleaned up and turned into really nice, clean, really nice cuts. A shooting board fixes a lot of evils, so definitely look that up. As to planing material flat, I'm guessing you have winding sticks. Winding sticks are fantastic for that. The one thing I want to tell people about is you kind of have this mindset that for some reason you have to plane all the way across the board on every stroke, and you don't have to do that. Only hit the high spots. If a spot is high, hit it. But if a spot is low, don't touch it. So focus on one spot or one area. And so if I'm planing a board, I might just be working on one corner, trying to get that one corner down and only moving like 6 inches away from it, even though the board might be 3 or 4 foot long. Just focusing on the high spots and not touching the low spots until you get close to it. And then once you get it all flattened out, then you can take your long smooth shavings and smooth out the board. And don't try and plane the entire thing at once. Just focus on the spots that need to be removed down. So hope that helps. What are your thoughts on viseless benches like the Nicholson bench? This is from Jonathan Brinkley. And cool. I am not personally, I'm not a fan of the viseless system. Though the more I do woodworking, the more I like not using the vise, although I still use it quite a bit. I don't have any problem with it. They work great. It's just a different system of working. You have to think about it slightly differently. There are some things that become more difficult. There are some things that become easier. I've been using a planing stop a lot more since I built my new bench. I built in planing stops into it, and I really like using a planing stop now. I didn't before. When I first got started, I tried going viseless, and it was an absolute pain and a disaster, and everything fell apart. And I said, no, I'm only using vises. But now for face planing, I'm almost always using a planing stop. For traversing a board, I'm using a planing stop on the back. But there are still things where I want to use that in vise and clamp down. Anytime I'm doing my carving or detailing work, being able to clamp from either end, I find that so much easier than using a holdfast. But there are some things that I still want to use a holdfast on. And so I like having all the options there. Not only for, in my case, having the video's sake of being able to show a bunch of different ways of doing it and always trying something different. But I like having the option. If you don't have the vise, then it's not an option, and you can't fall back onto it if you have a problem. But do I have a problem with going viseless? No. I just like using a vise, but personal preferences, everyone's different. So I think learning to not use a vise is very freeing because you can flip boards around and use them easier. But having a vise, it makes working a little bit easier for a lot of tasks because it's locked in place. You don't have to think about pushing on one side or on the other. So definitely worth trying out both and see what you like. Although I do find that the more people work with hand tools, the more they tend to lean towards a viseless approach. So I think I would kind of suggest that a new person work with vices so that they can focus on one skill at a time. But you may find that over time you want to get rid of vices or just not use them as much. So definitely something to think about. Michael Scott asks, wanting to begin doing dovetails, how do I decide how many or how big the dovetails need to be? There are a whole bunch of rules out there that you must follow that woodworking sets down, and they are, especially with dovetails, they're very specific about sizes and your dovetail angles, and you have to follow those rules because if you don't, the woodworking police will come and get you. No, honestly. The rule of thumb is if you're working in hardwood, you want your tails to be a little bit steeper and more of an angle so that they'd be more of like a 1 to a 9 or 1 to 8. Whereas if you're in softwoods, you want to relax that a little bit and make them more of a greater angle. So they might be like a 1 to 5, 1 to 6. But that being said, honestly, if you like the look of the tail, then use it. I think that's something a lot of people overlook, is that we get so caught up into these conventions of style and it must look this way that we forget that, the best way to find a new style, to find something that works for you, is to experiment and try things that don't fit the convention. So feel free to experiment. Feel free to play around and mess up. Have that ability to say, I don't care if I mess up on this. I can build another one. I don't care if I mess up on this. I can rework this piece. That's okay. And having that is a very freeing thing, but then it also gives you the chance to say, let's try something different. Let's try something that I haven't tried before. Let's try making it bigger. Let's try making it smaller. Let's try changing the angle. And eventually you'll find something that you really like. I like most of my dovetails to be like a 1 in 5, 1 in 6, even in the hardwoods. And I know a lot of hardwood people are like, that's too steep of an angle. And I don't care. I like it. I like the way it looks. I've never had a problem with it, and I enjoy it. Now, in the future, I may change my desires. I know like a lot of people really like those very thin pins. I don't like them. I like my pin and my tail to be about the same size. So it looks more like a zigzag pattern going up the board. I personally find that aesthetically pleasing to me, but other people don't. So find what you like, draw it out on a piece of paper. Do you like the look of it? Great, give it a try. You're never going to know until you do that. So I'm not answering your question here, but I just want to give you the freedom to not worry about it. Don't worry about messing up. It's really not a problem. So yeah, have fun with that. Sorry, that's one of my big rants. I think people get so caught up in doing what is woodworking correct that they forget to have fun and experiment. So yeah. Question from my shop. Is there a chance of more competition between you and other woodworkers on YouTube, or even viewers to make tools to give away to starter woodworkers? Don't know what you mean by competition between me and other woodworking channels. I have a couple collaborations I'm going to be doing here soon. One with Pale Dog Woodworking. He's a new YouTube channel and putting out some really, really, really cool videos. Definitely go look out Pale Dog. Pale Dog Woodworking is phenomenal. I'll be doing one with him. I got a couple other people I'm talking to, and probably doing a couple other collaborations. In March again this year, I'll probably be doing the woodworking, the hand tool build off again, and that was very successful this last year. So I might end up doing it then. I hope that answers your question. If not, go ahead and ask it down below, and I'll see if I can get to it then. Let me just add this to the list so I don't forget it. 28 buttons. My microphone is in the way of my buttons. Let's see. Reading down to see if there's any questions. JP Woodwork asks, are you still doing the Wright plane build? And if many of you know, I have a channel called the Wright Flyer, and I've built 2 airplanes, well, 1 airplane, and then partially completed another one, and actual real full-size airplanes. And I enjoy that. I am a licensed pilot, and I had planned on building a Wright Flyer, at least a plane that looks like a Wright Flyer, but with several modifications to make it a little bit safer. And that's still in the back burner of my brain. Someday I'd like to do that, but I kind of ran into the point where the amount of time that would require is not something I want to address right now. Also, the amount of time and space, the amount of money and space it would require are not something I want to invest in right now. So that is on the back burner. But if you want to look at that, I do have a YouTube channel called Wright Flyer, I think is the name of the channel. You mentioned a couple of tools in the final lathe video. One's an awl based on someone's design. Another, I couldn't catch the names. Didn't see it in the below the video section. The awl is from Jared Hildebrandt, or Doc Hildebrandt. He's another YouTube channel. Been a good friend for a while, and he gave me that awl about 1.5 years ago. And so it's a really nice awl, but he does a lot of things where he takes plumbing parts and makes tools out of them. Some cool videos. He made a screwdriver recently out of some plumbing parts and wood from an old level. So yeah, definitely check out Jared Hildebrandt. I think I put a link to his channel in the description. Yeah, I did put a link in his channel. So you should be able to see that, but I may have missed it. I don't know. But if you Google Doc Hildebrandt, that should come up. Woo, bounce down. Justin Spearing. I'm probably butchered that. Sorry, Justin. Question, trying to work around a customer's budget and in order to make anything, I need to use cheaper material. Making a trestle table, what would you recommend? Using, okay, sorry, my reading is not working today. Let me just add this before I forget. 30. Making a trestle table out of cheaper material. Well, you really can't get much cheaper than construction lumber. And if you like the look of it, it works well. I guess I don't know what your particular constraints are, and what look you're trying to go for. Red oak is a fairly cheap hardwood. I know a lot of people don't like the look of it because I think it just got overused in the 90s. And it's kind of something that a lot of people turn off. But quarter sawn red oak is actually still a very beautiful wood. I really, really enjoy it. And a lot of red oaks do look a lot like white oaks, and vice versa. A lot of white oaks do look like red oaks. So yeah, hope that gives you a couple ideas. But I would have to know a little more of the constraints about what you're looking for. Are you looking for something that's very rustic, or are you looking for something that's very modern, or are you looking for something that's traditional and chic? A trestle table is a good way to do that, especially if you're willing to build it out of construction lumber. That can be really cheap. Michael Scott asks, are you a proud owner of the Green Bay Packers, and how do the surrounding FIBS feel about that? Oh, yes. Yes, I am an owner of the Packers right here. And I do go up to their meeting every year, and it's kind of cool to be able to say legally I own that team, and have a say in what goes on. So yeah, I am an owner. Robert Brownski asks, did you make the wooden shoes you wear in the videos? I carved the outside of them, and I did some of the carving inside to make them fit my foot. They were given to me by Rob and Rob's Woodchuck. Actually, yep, he's right down there in the chat. He sent them over from the Netherlands, and I love them. They are fantastic to wear in the shop. So no, I did not make them particularly. I did do some of the inside carving just to make them fit my foot, and I do have a video on carving the outside and making them look pretty. But yes, those were a lot of fun. Mike Warner, how do you prepare leather? How do you prepare a leather strop to sharpen chisels and plane irons? I tried rubbing the compound onto my leather, and it just seems to sort of clump up. It depends on your compound. Some of them are very dry and they flake off easily. Some of them are very waxy and stick very well. And so I can't answer until I see what you particularly have. Usually the problem is with the compound and not with the leather. Unless you're using, a very stiff, smooth side of the leather, sometimes that is hard to stick with. I tend to use the rough side of the leather, so it applies better. But the compound I use is a chrome oxide in a crayon, so it's mixed with wax, and the wax tends to stick into the leather better, and that works very, very well for me. I actually buy it from Harbor Freight, just the cheap. I think the color I use is black. And I haven't noticed any difference between chrome and zinc and the different colors. They all tend to work well. Sometimes I'll even strop with just the smooth side without anything on it, just to give that final buffing on there. It's kind of fun. For all white oak. Ramayo Carla Jr. Sorry, I totally butchered your name. He asked the question, if all white oak in the world were to disappear, what would be your go-to lumber be? What would your go-to lumber be? Honestly, I make a big deal about oak being my favorite, but I can use all woods freely. The big reason why I use a lot of white oak is I have several supplies of it, and I can get it very, very cheaply. And so because of that, it is the wood I use on everything. I really love working with cherry with hand tools. It is fantastic. Walnut is just like heaven with hand tools. Butternut, let's see, box elder. That is a fantastic tool, wood to work with, especially when you get into the colors. You get that red flame in there. Very, very beautiful wood. So I'm fairly open to different woods. I use whatever's on hand. I know I make a big deal about loving white oak, and I do. White oak is a beautiful wood to me. But white oak is actually a very difficult wood to work with hand tools. It is hard. It is ring porous. It is very splintery. And so for hand tools, it's not an easy wood to work with, but the coloring on it and the shape, and it's a beautiful wood. But yeah, I'd probably have to go with walnut if I had to pick a next wood. Maybe hickory. I do like working with hickory, although it's a pain. Yeah, pick around. Robert Brownski asks again, what I want, wow, I can't read today. I want to build my first workbench. Is big box store lumber acceptable material? Definitely. Yes, yes, yes. You know, my first bench over here, my bench that I used for a year and a half, the one I still use, it's still sitting in my shop. It's made out of construction grade 2x4s, studs, and it works great. The great thing about a softwood bench is that you never have to worry about dinging your work on it. If you get a really hard like maple bench, you have to be careful anytime you're working with a softer wood like cherry or walnut, that if you bounce it on the corner of the bench, you're going to ding up your work. Whereas with a soft bench like that, you don't have to worry about as much. So definitely 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x10s, the Nicholson style bench, they are fantastic benches, and just making them out of construction grade lumber, great choice. Yeah, the only reason I went with what I have is I like walnut. I like the white oak, but I made the front and back skirts out of walnut, so it'd be a little softer. So if I'm working with something like that, I'm not going to be having the chance of digging it up as much. So yeah, definitely a good choice. Question from Aaron Todd. How's the kitchen renovation going? Wood floors look fantastic. Great job. Thanks, Aaron. It's going great. I'm actually, I just bought all of the hickory to finish off the trim work, and I am looking forward to doing that. And I am currently running into the problem I have. It's about 270 board feet of hickory, and I need to rip down, what was the total on it? I think it was 800 feet of ripping in order to make all this trim. In hickory. Yeah. So I'm going to be hand making enough for one window, one door, and about 20 feet of crown molding and base molding. And the rest of it, I'm going to take over to a friend's house and run it through a table saw. But yeah, I'm going to be doing that here soon. And then I have to do the backsplash on the kitchen. I have one more wall to paint. So it's just kind of the fiddly dink stuff that I'm kind of putting on the back burner, especially during this month while I'm doing one video a day. It'll all be done by Christmas. And then we'll probably be starting on the living room here soon, but the living room will be a lot easier. That's just trim walls and flooring. So there's no kitchen cabinets and tearing up all the tiles. So that'll be a lot easier. But yeah, it's coming along very well. If you want to see that, I think I just no, I haven't posted that video. I will have a video coming out soon on my second channel showing where the kitchen is at and some of the things coming up. So definitely coming along. I bounced up. Wow, a lot of comments. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. What are your future projects? This is from Marcus Skov. Probably butchered the name, sorry. I am going to be, well, I'm going to be finishing all of the tool wall and tool storage. I have a bunch of racks that I need to make to hold all my other tools right now. They're all over on a, I have to walk back and forth to get to my tools, and I don't want to do that. So everything's going to eventually be hung on the wall behind me. I'm going to be finishing up. I bought a scroll saw frame a while ago, so I need to build a flywheel and a treadle for that. And I'll have a foot-powered scroll saw in my shop. I'm looking forward to having that. I have a whole bunch of Christmas projects coming up. I'm going to be making a few different boxes, making a few other tools. I want to be making a few planes here soon. I'm going to be making a like a locker room setup for my kids eventually, so that they can have shoe storage underneath with a bench and then places for their coats and backpacks. So there's a lot of projects coming up. So hope that answers your question. Oop. Didn't copy that over. Let's see, what is next? What is your favorite shop project? Why not ask me what is my favorite child? Yeah, I don't know if I can pick a favorite shop project. Probably the bench. You just have to say your bench because it's the thing you work on all the time. I mean, I really can't do much of anything else without the bench. It's there. I love my bench. Making the frame saw was fantastic. Making this making the spring pole lathe, that's been a lot of fun. I don't know if I could pick a favorite. I use them all equally and love them all. So don't ask me what's my favorite. Jason Bear asks, I hear you talk about previous power tool usage. What motivated you to switch to exclusively hand tools? A lot of things, actually. I used to have a full power tool shop. I was raised on power tools. I never touched a hand plane in my life until a little over 2 years ago. And power tools were the only way I did woodworking. I never sharpened anything in my life until we started moving. And then we moved and moved and moved again. And before my youngest reached 3 years old, we lived in 5 different houses. And every house we moved into got a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. And in doing so, I sold tools and sold tools and sold tools until I got rid of all my tools. And I basically just said, well, I guess I'm not doing woodworking anymore because I don't have a table saw, planer, joiner. And the house we have only has a space that's like 8 foot by 10 foot to do woodworking. And I can't do a table saw, joiner, and planer in there. So I can't do woodworking. But then I came across a video of a guy making a grooving plane, actually worth the effort. Fantastic channel. Definitely go check him out. But he made a grooving plane quickly on the channel and used it. And suddenly it was this light bulb moment of, do you know how long it would take me to make a groove with my old setup? It probably would have been quicker to make the grooving plane and make the groove than it would have been to set up my router jig and get everything tuned in and then run the board through. And I thought, I could do that in the space. It's 8 foot by 10 foot. I don't need any space more than that for hand tools. That works great. And then I'm a stay-at-home dad, so it's quiet. It's dust-free or very little dust. I don't have to worry about all the power tools with kids around. I can have the kids in the shop while I'm working. And it was just this great light bulb moment, and I just decided to do things with hand tools. And I still, to this day, love working with hand tools, and it's passion. Oops. Okay, let's move on. So hope that answers your question. What was your old day job? My master's is in technical theater, and I used to run the metalworking side of a scene shop, making sets and things like that. And so we worked on multi-million-dollar sets, basically building GPS-controlled self-guided mountains, 3-story tall set pieces that would roll around on set autonomously. So that was my dream job. And then we found out I was making just a hair more than we were paying the babysitter. So why in the world was I working? So yeah, I've done a lot of things in my life. I've been working since I was 5 years old. So I've had a lot of odd and weird jobs that people are like, when did you do that? Do leather strops work? Yes, they do work. Hope that answers your question. Why is oak my favorite? White oak is my favorite because I love the color. I love the variance in it. Every piece of white oak is different. The grain is wild, particularly with like swamp oak. It's constantly exploding in color, and it comes in a wide variety of colors. When you get any curl in there or any burl, it's gorgeous, gorgeous wood. It is a pain to work with, but I think the reason why it became my favorite is when I first started working with hand tools, I came across a guy who was selling out a barn full of white oak, and he had like 20,000 board feet to get rid of, and he sold it for 50 cents a board foot. And so I bought 400 board foot of white oak, and for the first year and a half, all I had to work with was white oak, and I just learned to love it. So it was a Yeah, that's why. Yeah, let me just add this over. 45. Oh, let's see. No, there's no way of posting a picture on here. Sorry, but you can email it to me. I just can't see it right now. What is an okay construction grade material to practice on that isn't pine? I don't know of a construction grade material that isn't pine. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure it is all pine. Yeah, pine. You're going to find a lot of poplar fairly cheap. You can occasionally, around here, you can find aspen in the big box stores. You can also find maple and oak in the big box stores. Red oak is very, very common. You'll find a lot of red oak. Red oak is, it's a difficult wood, but not as difficult as white oak. Still kind of fun. Yeah, because my bench is made out of Douglas fir, which is a construction grade pine. Oops, sorry. Just get this out of here. Phone is ringing. Sorry, reading down through trying to find. Mr. Wright, do you dry your own wood stock? Do you buy lumber to use? How long do you air dry for? I have some of each. I have purchased almost all of the wood that I get is from local sawyers. And so part of the time it's wet, part of the time it's been kiln dried, part of the time it's air dried. I'll often air dry behind this wall behind me. I have a whole bunch of lumber stacked in there, and I'll occasionally have a fan on to circulate air through that space. And depending upon the lumber, I have some lumber that's been sitting in there for almost 2 years now, and it's not quite dry yet. It should be dry in a few months, and I'll probably be making a dining room table out of that. I honestly, rarely ever do I go to a lumber yard. I get most of my lumber on Craigslist from finds and local sawyers who I've built a relationship with, and I'll call them up and say, hey, do you have any hickory? And they'll be like, yeah, I got a couple hickory logs out here. I can saw it for you. And so that's how I get most of my lumber. Hope that answers your question. That was from Greg Dent. But yeah, I don't go to lumber yards that often. Actually, I don't know if I've ever purchased lumber from an actual lumber yard. That might make a good video though sometime. Maybe I should go to a lumber yard and say, hey, let me show you around a lumber yard. Do you have other hobbies? Yes, I have lots of hobbies. Yes. My biggest hobby is running. I do ultra distance running. I've done theater work. I love lighting, and I love programming. I love electrical wiring. I find that fun. Flying. What hobbies haven't I had? I used to say my hobby is finding new hobbies. So yes, I do have a lot of hobbies. Yeah, and Sean Graham, he's a cool guy. And if you haven't had a chance to meet him in person, I got to hang out with him at the what is that called? It was the Woodstock this last summer. It was the Skytook, Oklahoma. Had a woodworker hang out there, and he was a couple booths down for me. So definitely check out his stuff. Worth the effort. How do you learn new skills in woodworking? Another question from Marcus Scoff. Honestly, doing it. I am the weirdo. I don't like to learn from other people. I like to jump in and learn. And so usually my method of learning is I jump in, I make a mistake, I play with it, I find a way that I like to work with. I'm willing to mess up. I'm willing to do a horrible job. I'm okay with that. And then once I've developed a method that works okay for me, then I'll go online and I will research for it. I'll go find a book, or I'll talk to a friend and I'll say, how do you do this? And then I'll learn another method from them, and I'll bring that method back to what I do and say, okay, how can I adapt what I have kind of messed with myself and find something else. Is that the best way to learn? Absolutely not. It is the way I find it fun to learn. And for me, everything is about the enjoyment of it. Probably the best way to learn is to have detailed information to follow step by step, and then learn it and find a method that is proven and works well. And then from there, try and figure out a way to make it your own. Particularly if you go to like the hand tool school, going through those semester by semester is fantastic. The amount of detail he has in there, and really gives you a great grounding. And you can't go wrong with the method you learn there. And then after you learn a method from someone who has proven it, someone who has a working method, then you can throw in your own ideas and say, you know, how can I make this my own? How can I do something that fits my style a little bit better? But don't be afraid to mess up. I think that is the thing that most people have the most problem with woodworking, is that they have the fear of messing up. And just throw that out the window. You're going to mess up. You're not going to learn unless you mess up. You're not going to learn unless you dive in and do it. You can have all the head knowledge you want, but until you grab that saw and you put it in the work, your arm will not know how it's going to feel. Your arm won't know, what does that angle feel like? How does your elbow fit? And it's just one of those things you've got to learn by doing. So dive in. Don't be afraid to mess up, and have fun. If you're not having fun, then find another way. There's always another method, and you'll eventually find a method that is enjoyable. Do you want to go back to power tools? Yes and no. There are occasionally, like when I am planing down 200 board feet of hickory, then I'm like, you know, I would love to have a table saw and bandsaw and get done with this. That would be enjoyable. But then there are other times where I'm playing with, you know, a really cool piece of hickory with a lot of shape and color, and then I'm like, oh, this is so much nicer than working with a power tool. Eventually, what I would love to do is have a big enough shop that I can have a completely hand tool side and a completely power tool side. And then my long-term goal is to have a second YouTube channel that's all about power tools. And I do everything with power tools. Even those things that are be much easier with a hand tool, I'll still do it with a power tool. And then make the exact same project in both channels. And then in each channel, I can say, you know, if you don't have this tool, then go check it out in this channel. Or, you know, if you want to find a different method, go check this out. So I can do the exact same project side by side and show different methods of doing it. I think that would be a blast and a lot of fun. A lot of work, but a lot of fun. What kind of stone do you use for sharpening, and what grits? This is from Ram Chickpig. Interesting name. I like that. Ram Chickpig. Love to see the story behind that one. I use DMT diamond stones. They're constantly flat. They are great to work with. They cut quickly. They are a lot of fun. I use the extra coarse, the medium fine, and the extra fine. Grits, I don't know exactly what they work out to. The top grit is supposedly an equivalent to a 1200 grit, but diamond grits do not compare to whetstone grits. They cut differently. They cut in different rates. So grit wise, you can't say that a diamond stone is an X grit. It's just, it doesn't relate that way. So I like to go by the names they put on the stones. Or I could go by microns, but then that gets people really confused. So yeah, definitely go check those out. If you want to see any of the tools that I particularly use on my website, woodbywright.com, I have a tab called Tools, and in there I have a whole list of the tools that I commonly use, and so I have all my stones listed out. So if you want to see the specific stones, you can see those there. Why aren't kids being creative instead of playing video games? Because they haven't been exposed to the creativity and the fun. That's why I love having my kids in the shop. That's just seeing my daughter's eyes light up when she creates something is fantastic. And so now she's always asking me, Daddy, can I go make something? Like, no, you can't make anything. Go watch your phone. Rob. Sorry, seeing if there's any questions. I don't know if there's any other questions down here. So if you have any last minute questions, go ahead and put them down there. Otherwise, I'll wrap this up here soon. Anything making at the moment? Not at the moment. Well, I'm actually going to be making a new treadle for the lathe. The one from Roy Underhill's book is just basically a stick, and it works. But In the shop on the concrete, it moves around, and I thought, you know, I'm just going to work with this stick for a while and get used to it and learn to work with it, because, you know, Roy Underhill uses it, so I'm going to use it. But then I watched Shannon Rogers' video on making his treadle, and yeah, Shannon Rogers' plan is better. So I'm going to be making a few modifications to it, but I'm going to be building that here soon. So that video should be coming out soon. Oh, this post, there it goes. Do you like sharpening? Yes and no. Sometimes I'm just get so absorbed into the woodworking that I don't want to sharpen. But then there's other, well, there's, yeah, times like now where I don't think I have a sharp plane hanging on my board. That I'm probably just going to take like an hour or two and go through and one by one sharpen all my tools and chisels, just so I know everything's sharp and ready to go. And I like when I can focus on sharpening and kind of become a zen point and do them all at once. I enjoy that. Sometimes it just becomes a break in woodworking, but yes, I do enjoy sharpening. I just have to be in the right mindset for it. Seeing if there's any questions. What do I think of Paul Sellers? I think he's awesome. His attention to detail and his history is fantastic. I love watching his videos, especially with this new bench build that he has coming up. I'm looking forward to seeing all that. Great teacher. Love his channel and watch it regularly. So yeah, definitely Paul Sellers is awesome. Yeah. Do you want a bigger shop? Someday, yes. Eventually, once I get a shop big enough, I can have a full hand tool and power tool side. I think that would be cool. So yes, a bigger shop is in my future, but I have to have property to build the shop. So someday. Does making coffins in Germany count as weird woodworking job for a Brit? I guess so. I can't say I've ever made a coffin. Question: what finish do you recommend for an outdoor bench made of Douglas fir and red oak? I really like the method that Matt Cremona used for finishing his table and bench, using a penetrating epoxy to really seal in and stop water movement. Penetrating epoxy is a great start to it, and then going to like a marine varnish such as epiphanes or something of that nature. If you look for anything that's designed for boats and working in the marine environment, you know you have a good quality there. So definitely epiphanes would be probably my go-to for outdoor woodworking. I've only used epiphanes once before, but I was very pleased with its outcome. So yeah, definitely worth it. How do you select thickness of wood and what joints to use? I'm a little afraid I over or under engineer everything. You know, when you're first getting started, there is no problem with over engineering things. Over engineer to your heart's content. That's fine. I still do that. I like building big beefy things. I like the weight and massive things. So going big isn't a problem. The problem is when you start getting into your design work and what do you think looks good, and then you start getting thinner and thinner until you start getting to that breakaway point. And a lot of it is just experience. You won't know until you experience it, and you start to know, how does this board flex? How will this board break? And once you've experienced that a few times, then you start to get an idea of it. And so I really can't tell you, go with X size or go with measurements. I mean, you can go and look at other plans. What have other people put out? But sometimes you have to take that with a grain of salt. Does this person really know what they're talking about? You never know. So experiment and get to know it. And that's something that with time you will get an eye and a feel for how thick does something need to be and what does its support need to be. Hope that answers your question. That was from Matt Projects. Sorry, man. Eastern European names. No, it's not Eastern Europe. I don't even know. I'm sorry. I'm butchering names and really having a bad time of it. Sorry about that. Let me put this in here before I forget. 0000. Okay. One last question from Antino Greco? Jaco? Draco. Sorry, another name butchered there. I'm considering building a Carbide O2 steel plane blade to work on mesquite and Texas ebony. Am I crazy for attempting this, or should I just sharpen regular blades more often? No. Veritas actually for a while actually had a Carbide blade you could buy, and they last really well. The problem is sharpening them. They are a pain to sharpen. You have to have diamonds for them. At least from what I understand, you have to have diamonds. They're not easy to sharpen. But yeah, Carbide works, I guess, if you want to. I have thought about, getting like a Carbide blade for my smoother. That might be fun, but I haven't yet. So do I think you're crazy? No. But I would like to try it sometime. So I hope that answers your questions. This has been a lot of fun, and I've been enjoying it. So if you have any questions that I didn't get to or would like to send them to me, feel free to send me an email. I have contact on my About page on YouTube, as well as a contact page through my website, woodbywright.com. So yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to next time. So until next time, have a wonderful day. Where's the stop button?